Okay, let's unpack this. There's just something about the wilderness, isn't there? That quiet, the solitude. It really pulls you in when you want a true escape. But what happens when that peace gets completely shattered by something, well, terrifying? Today, we're doing a deep dive into exactly that. You sent us 3 really vivid, honestly quite chilling accounts from the YouTube channel MJV Animations. These are true stories of unsettling encounters people had while totally alone out in the woods. Our mission here is to kind of pull apart these moments, figure out why they create such intense fear, such helplessness, and maybe what we can learn about trusting our gut, navigating the unknown.
Yeah, and what's fascinating, I think, is how these stories build suspense. It often starts small, right? Like a weird sound or an animal acting strangely, maybe just seeing something quick out of the corner of your eye. But then it escalates into real, actual terror. So we're not just looking at what happened, but why these specific details hit so hard, why they tap into those really primal fears we all have about being alone, about what we can't see. It's like a psychological trigger.
Definitely. Okay, so let's start with the first one. This is from mid-2018. A 23-year-old guy heads into the Appalachian Mountains in Vermont. He'd read about this abandoned lodge on some online forum. It was super remote, unmarked path, overgrown, apparently a tough 2-hour hike just to get there. Initially, he thought maybe he could camp inside the lodge itself, but when he got there, it was clear that was a bad idea. The roof was gone, vines growing everywhere, mold, just this awful smell. So plan B. He finds a spot about 200 feet away, sets up his tent, just as the sun's starting to go down.
And that setup is, well, it's perfect for building tension, isn't it? The remote location, the decrepit building nearby, darkness falling. It immediately ramps up that sense of vulnerability because you're not just physically isolated. You lose that that psychological safety net. There's nobody else around to confirm what you're hearing or seeing, no backup. That extreme isolation plus the creepy old lodge and the night coming on it just primes your mind for fear.
Absolutely. It's that switch, isn't it? From expecting peace to suddenly feeling dread. And that dread kicked in a few hours into the night. He hears this sound, loud, chilling, coming from the direction of the lodge. He described it like wood booming or maybe benting, like under massive pressure. It only lasted a few seconds, but it was so sharp, so out of place, just sent chills right down his spine. Then silence. For about 30 minutes. But he couldn't shake it, That unease just kept growing. He felt he had to check it out. So he built his campfire up, made sure it was going strong, then headed towards the lodge with just a small LED lamp. Okay, so he gets to the lodge, and he freezes. The door. He'd specifically left it wide open earlier. No, it was slammed shut. And worse, there were these fresh scratches all over the front of it, like fingernails, or maybe a knife had been dragged down it. He tries the door handle, tries to push it open. Nothing. Wouldn't budge. He said it felt like something, or someone, was physically holding it closed from the inside. Resisting him.
See, that's the moment. That's where the fear really shifts gears. It goes from, maybe an unsettling natural sound, a creak or groan, to something physically impossible happening. The closed door, those scratches, the resistance. That's not random. It implies something conscious, something active, and potentially something hostile. It moves from that vague, background anxiety to the terrifying thought that there's an intelligent, maybe malicious force aware of you, and it's messing with your environment. That hits that primal fear, doesn't it? The fear of being watched, being hunted by something that means you harm.
And it gets even creepier. He backs away fast, rushes back towards his camp, only to find another disturbing change. His campfire, the one he just built up minutes before, it was out, completely extinguished. Just a column of smoke rising from the damp ash. He yelled out, "Hello, anyone there?" Nothing, just silence. That was it for him. He decided, right, gotta pack up, gotta get out of here now. As he's shoving the last of his gear into his backpack, he hears it. Something nearby. It was this quiet, soft laughing, like one person just chuckling under their breath, watching him. From behind the trees, in the dark, he said it sounded like they were insane. Pure panic mode. He grabbed his stuff, left things behind, didn't care, tried to follow that difficult path back out with what he called a crappy lantern. Kept stopping, thinking he heard the laughing again, convinced someone was following him. Never actually saw anyone, though.
Oh, that soft, insane laughter. That's particularly insidious, isn't it? Because it attacks your sense of reality. It's human-like, but completely wrong, completely unnatural in that context. It sort of bypasses your rational mind and plugs straight into primal fear. And the fact he couldn't see anything, that lack of visual confirmation, combined with everything else, the door, the fire, now the laughter, creates this profound sense of helplessness. You're trapped with an unseen, intelligent threat.
Yeah. He said even 7 years later, he still thinks about it, calls it the most disturbing, horrifying thing he's ever experienced. Just that feeling of being totally helpless and that awful possibility that someone or something had actually made that abandoned place their twisted home. Okay, so from that kind of psychological horror in Vermont, let's shift gears. Our next deep dive takes us to Montana, just outside Glacier National Park. This was at a pretty well-known overlook spot. The hiker went in the off-season, right before winter set in. He said he didn't mind the cold and figured he had the place completely to himself. Took him almost 6 hours to hike up there, arrived about 5:30 p.m.
And that highlights that classic paradox, doesn't it? People seek out nature for the solitude, for the peace and quiet, but that very isolation becomes this huge vulnerability the moment something unexpected happens. Your solitude suddenly becomes a liability. No witnesses, no help nearby.
Exactly. And that's precisely what unfolded. He set up his camp, went to the cliff edge to watch the sunset. Beautiful, peaceful moment. Then he turns around to walk back to his tent, and bam, he jumped out of his skin. There's a man staying right behind him in the bushes, just looking right at him. But the second the hiker saw him, the man turned and just walked away. Immediately. Didn't say anything. And didn't head towards the campsite area either. The hiker just thought, that was really weird. What do you make of that first encounter? It's brief, the threat isn't explicit, but that discomfort is instant.
It's the jolt, isn't it? The sheer unexpectedness, plus the behavior is just off. It's not normal social interaction. Appearing suddenly, silently staring, then leaving without a word. It breaks all our ingrained social scripts. Your brain tries to make sense of it. Maybe he's lost, just passing through. But that little alarm bell starts ringing, that something's not right feeling. It's the first sign that maybe things aren't as peaceful as they seem.
And that little alarm bell got louder later. Around 11 p.m., he's sitting by his campfire, and he hears what sounded, in his words, eerily like human footsteps in the woods nearby. He calls out. The footsteps paused like they hesitated, then they continued. But nobody answered him. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe it's just a deer. Because surely, if it was a person, surely they'd respond. But then again, why would anyone be just wandering around out there at 11 p.m.? Made no sense.
Classic cognitive dissonance right there. The mind is desperately trying to find a logical, non-threatening explanation for something unsettling. But the details don't quite fit. That hesitation in the footsteps, that's key. An animal wouldn't hesitate like that when called out to. Then the continued silence, it just amplifies the unease. It pushes you from just being curious or a bit creeped out to genuine alarm, especially when the easy explanations don't hold water. Your gut is screaming danger.
And his gut was right. This is where it takes a really dark turn. Past midnight now, he can't sleep. He walks back out to the overlook, maybe to look at the stars, clear his head. Suddenly, crack. Multiple sticks snap right behind him. A bush rustles aggressively. He spins around. It's the same man from earlier, but this time, he doesn't turn away. He pushes through the bush, walking quickly, purposefully towards the overlook, towards him. The hiker tries to say something like, "Hey, what are you doing?" But the man talks right over him, with this really disturbing fake smile plastered on his face, saying just random nonsense, gibberish, while still moving closer. And then, that horrifying split-second realization of the man's actual intent. He lunged, tried to shove the hiker straight over the cliff edge.
Wow, okay, so that raises a really critical point for us, I think. How terrifyingly fast can a situation escalate from just weird or maybe unsettling straight into a violent life or death struggle? That sudden shift from seemingly passive observation or just odd behavior to outright physical assault, chilling acceleration. It really underscores the hidden dangers that can be present even when you think you're totally alone.
It's terrifying. That switch just flipped from unease to attempted murder, basically. That thin line between feeling safe and suddenly being in extreme danger. Luckily, the hiker was ready, somehow. He had good footing. He said he was a bit bigger than the attacker. He managed to shove the man back, creating space, moving away from the edge. But the guy came right back at him. His face, the hiker described it as horrifyingly angry and full of rage. They grappled, wrangled around for maybe 30 seconds. Even though the attacker was skinny, he was apparently incredibly determined, dead set on taking me down. Eventually, the hiker got the upper hand, maybe landed a good hit, and the man just turned and ran off into the darkness. He said later he just couldn't believe how lucky he was that the guy didn't pull a weapon. After that, he didn't hesitate. Packed his stuff instantly, threw on his headlamp, and got out of there. Started hiking down in the pitch black. Then about 2 hours into the descent, his headlamp batteries died. Can you imagine? He had to just find a spot off the trail, set up a sort of mini camp, and wait in the dark until sunrise. He did report it later, but apparently there were different theories about the guy, nothing concrete. But the hiker, he's convinced. He said, "I could have lost my life that night." All right, for our final story, we move to a more recent account from just last summer. This one involves backpacking to an isolated camping spot with a companion, a loyal Australian shepherd named Rocky. The hiker loved this particular spot because it was always deserted. Rocky could just run free, off-leash, explore. It was a long hike, though, about 8 hours, so they didn't get there until maybe an hour or two before sunset.
Okay, so now we have a different element in play, the animal companion. This is really interesting because their senses, their instincts, are often so much sharper than ours. They can offer a completely different perspective on potential threats, picking up on things, sounds, smells, maybe even just a feeling that we humans completely miss.
And Rocky definitely picked up on something. About 15 minutes after they arrived, hikers start setting up the tent. Rocky comes back from his usual runaround exploring, but he's acting strange. Really out of character. His tail is tucked down. He walked right up to his owner, nudged him, then turned around to face the direction he'd just come from, just staring out into the woods. The owner said he almost never saw Rocky act like that, unless it was something he was genuinely scared of, like a big thunderstorm. He checked Rocky over. Physically, he seemed fine, but he was clearly anxious. Stayed right by his owner's side, wouldn't leave him, just kept watching the woods, constantly scanning.
That's such a classic sign, isn't it? An animal sensing something unseen. Dogs are incredibly attuned to their environment. That behavior, tail tucked, staying close, the fixed stare, it's a clear nonverbal warning signal. It's pure instinct kicking in, telling them, and by extension they're human, that there's danger present.
Yeah. And even though the owner couldn't see or hear anything, Rocky's behavior put him on edge. He said this uneasy feeling started to creep in, like I was being watched. He tried to brush it off initially, thinking maybe Rocky was just making him nervous, but the feeling stuck. Then, about an hour after sunset, pitch black now, Rocky suddenly snaps his head up, freezes, stares intensely into the trees, ears pricked forward, tail clamped between his legs, and he starts this low, quiet whining. The owner grabs his flashlight, shines it out maybe 50 feet or so into the darkness, sees absolutely nothing. He had bear spray with him, felt a bit safer for that, but Rocky's reaction, he confirmed something was definitely wrong out there. They eventually got into the tent, tried to settle down. Rocky even fell asleep after a while, but the danger wasn't gone. Later that night, the owner starts having this really vivid dream. He's walking alone in the woods in the dream, and he keeps hearing this strange, high-pitched noise over and over. Then, bam, he's shot awake. And there's Rocky, right in his face, nudging him urgently, whining in his ear, making that exact same high-pitched noise from the dream. He realized Rocky must have been trying to wake him up for a while.
Wow, the way the dream just bled straight into reality with Rocky's warning. That's genuinely chilling. It almost suggests his subconscious was already picking up on the danger, maybe hearing that sound on some level, and the dream was processing it. Then Rocky's actions confirmed it. It shows how deep that intuition can run, even in sleep.
And that intuition, amplified by Rocky, absolutely saved him. He quickly unzips the tent flap, clicks on his flashlight, and the beam immediately lands on a person, standing just 10 feet away, dressed head to toe in black, hoodie pulled up, obscuring most of his face, just showing like a distressed-looking beard. And in his hand, the glint of light off a small pocket knife blade. The owner just froze, pure shock. The figure started to take a step towards the tent. And then Rocky, absolute hero. He followed the owner out of the tent. He launches forward, starts growling this deep, aggressive growl, barking like crazy. He kept moving back and forth, literally putting his body between his owner and the intruder. That made the man hesitate, just for a second, but it was enough. It gave the owner time to dive back into the tent and grab his bear spray. With Rocky still barking and acting aggressively, the man clearly thought better of it. He didn't take another step, just turned around and ran off into the woods. Rocky, thankfully, didn't chase him. Seriously, that dog's intervention, absolutely life-saving. Just a perfect example of that bond, that protective instinct. They didn't stick around. Packed up immediately, he started a long hike back in the dark. He said despite the adrenaline, he actually felt less scared on the hike out than he might have, just because of how well Rocky handled it, how protective he was. He reported this one too, but again, not really investigated. But the lesson learned was crystal clear for him. Now, he says, if Rocky doesn't trust something, it's best to just get out of there, period.
That story really drives home the incredible value of animal companions in these situations. They're not just pets. They're like living, breathing alarm systems. They perceive the world differently, through senses we barely utilize. Rocky's reaction was definitive proof of danger long before the human saw the knife. It powerfully underscores that idea. Sometimes the most reliable danger signal isn't visual. It's that gut feeling, that instinct. Or, in this case, your dog's instinct. That profound, nonverbal communication of, get out now, should never be ignored.
Okay, so taking these three stories together, The creepy laughter in Vermont, that terrifying fight in Montana, and Rocky's life-saving warning. They all paint this picture, don't they, of how thin that line can be between the peace we seek in nature and encountering something truly, deeply frightening.
Exactly. And if we connect them, what really stands out is that profound sense of vulnerability that comes with true isolation. It's not just about being far from help physically, it's also psychological. Your usual reference points disappear. Small sounds get amplified. The unknown feels immense and potentially threatening because there's no one to share that burden, to validate or dismiss your fears.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how often the real terror comes not from what's clearly seen, but from what's just hinted at, right? The scratches, the fire being out, that faint laughter, the footsteps you can't see, the dog's anxiety. It plays directly into that deep, primal fear of the unknown. Our brains are wired to try and make sense of things, and when we can't, we often imagine the worst.
And what's particularly chilling across these accounts is that the threat ultimately wasn't bears or mountain lions, it was other humans. Malevolent human intent lurking in supposed solitude. That really makes you question, doesn't it? Does our idea of solitude in the wild sometimes blind us to the unsettling truth about who else might be out there and what their reasons might be?
That's a really crucial point. It changes the whole dynamic of fear. And it highlights, I think, the biggest takeaway from all three. Trust your instincts. Trust that gut feeling. Or, like in the last story, trust the instincts of your companion. In almost every case, there's that initial flicker of unease, that feeling something was wrong before the situation escalated. Heeding that warning early on seems critical. It's that innate fight or flight kicking in.
Definitely. And despite the absolute terror they faced, each person did react. They packed up, they fought back, they had a companion intervene. It shows the importance of being prepared, not just physically with gear, but mentally, having some kind of plan, even if it's just get out fast. These stories aren't just about fear, they're also about resilience, about survival against the odds.
So we've unpacked three incredibly intense experiences today, from that soft, insane laughter echoing in the Vermont woods to a desperate fight for life on a Montana cliff edge and the undeniable heroism of a dog named Rocky. Each story really throws into sharp relief that razor's edge between the freedom of solitude and the potential for truly terrifying encounters out there.
Which leads us, and you, our listener, with a final thought to maybe chew on. How do stories like these change the way you think about being alone in the wild? Does that allure of complete isolation still hold the same appeal when you consider the potential dangers not just from nature, but from unseen human elements that might be waiting just beyond the firelight, hidden in the shadows?